In a quiet village long ago, when the sun rose gently over the rice fields and the sound of children laughing filled the air, there lived a young woman named Kisā Gotamī. She was not rich, nor powerful, nor famous. She was an ordinary woman who loved her family with the simple heart of a mother. Her greatest treasure was her little child, a boy with bright eyes and laughter that made her forget all her worries. Every morning she held him close, whispering prayers for his safety, for his health, for his long life. He was her world, her reason to live, the light that warmed her heart. But one morning, that light went out. Her child, still so small, fell ill with a sudden fever. No matter what she did, the herbs, the prayers, the tears, his tiny body grew still and cold. The laughter stopped. The silence in her home became unbearable. In that moment, her heart broke open, and her mind refused to believe what her eyes could see. She held the child close to her chest, rocking him as if her love could bring him back. "He's only sleeping," she whispered again and again. "He will wake soon." Grief turned to madness. She could not accept what had happened. In her pain, she refused to let go. She walked out of her house, still carrying her dead child, his lifeless head resting on her arm. She went from door to door, calling out to the neighbors, "Please, help me. My child is sick. He needs medicine. Someone, please give me medicine to make him well again." The villagers looked at her with sorrow. Some turned away. Some tried to speak gently, but she could not hear them. Her heart was deaf to everything except the hope that someone, somewhere, could save him. She wandered like a ghost, her clothes dusty, her eyes wild, her arms trembling. As she carried the small, silent body, the world around her seemed cruel and cold. Why had this happened? Why did life give so much joy only to take it away? She did not know that her pain was the same pain that all beings carry, the sorrow of losing what they love. Days passed, and still she searched. People began to whisper that she had gone mad. But in truth, she was only human, a mother, unable to face the final truth of life. In every heart there is a part that refuses to accept death, that clings to love as if it could stop the world from changing. Kisā Gotamī's suffering was the suffering of all who have ever loved deeply. Then one day, when her feet were bleeding and her strength nearly gone, she met an old man at the edge of the road. He looked at her with kind eyes and asked softly, "Daughter, why are you weeping?" She cried out, "My child is sick. I need medicine to cure him." The old man sighed gently and said, "I do not have medicine, but I have heard of one who might. His name is the Buddha. They say he knows the truth that cures all sorrow. Go to him. Perhaps he will help you." Her eyes lit up for the first time in many days. "The Buddha," she whispered, as if the name itself carried hope. Without resting, she turned her steps toward the monastery where the Buddha was staying. The journey was long and her arms grew weak, but she would not stop. Her love was stronger than her pain. She believed that somewhere, someone could make death undone. As the sun set behind the trees, the golden light touched her face. She walked on, holding the small body close, her heart whispering one prayer over and over. "Please, let him live again." She did not know that the medicine she was about to receive would not bring her child back. It would awaken her to a truth far greater. This is the story of a mother's love, of unbearable loss, and of the wisdom that turns sorrow into peace. It is the story of how one woman, blinded by grief, came to see the deepest truth of life, that everything born must pass away, and that through understanding, even the deepest pain can open the door to freedom. When Kisā Gotamī reached the gates of the monastery, the world was quiet. The evening breeze moved through the trees, and the monks were finishing their chanting. She stood there, holding her child, her body thin from exhaustion, her eyes burning with desperate hope. The people who saw her whispered to each other, for she looked half-crazed, her hair unkempt, her arms trembling, her lips dry from calling out to strangers all day. Yet behind her wild eyes was something pure, the love of a mother who could not accept that her child was gone forever. She asked the monks where the Buddha was, and they led her to the grove where he often sat beneath a spreading tree. The Buddha was seated in calm silence, the light of the setting sun touching his face. There was no judgment. In his eyes, only stillness and deep understanding. When Kisā Gotamī saw him, she fell to her knees. Her voice cracked as she cried, "Blessed One, please help me. My child is sick. He has stopped breathing. Give me medicine, Holy Sir. You are wise, please save him." The Buddha looked at her with great compassion. He did not speak of death, nor try to explain what she could not yet hear. Instead, in a voice as gentle as the wind, he said, "Yes, Gotami, I can help you. But first, bring me a handful of mustard seeds from a home where no one has ever died." Her eyes widened with sudden joy. She bowed deeply, thanking him again, and hurried back toward the village, clutching her child close. She thought at last, "I have found the one who can save him. All I need is mustard seeds. Surely, there will be many houses where no one has died." The hope in her heart flared like a small flame in the darkness. She went to the first house and knocked on the door. A kind woman answered. Kisa said eagerly, "Good lady, please, can you give me some mustard seeds? The Buddha needs them to make medicine for my child." The woman smiled sadly and said, "Of course, sister. But tell me, did anyone ever die in your family?" The woman's smile faded. "Yes," she said quietly. "My husband passed away last year." Kisa's face fell. "Then I cannot take your seeds," she said softly, and walked away. At the second house, an old man gave her a handful of seeds, but when she asked if anyone had ever died there, he nodded. "My mother, my father, even my son. Death has visited this home many times." Kisa returned the seeds with trembling hands. "Thank you," she whispered, "but they will not help." She walked on. House after house, door after door. The same story repeated. Some had lost children, some had lost parents, some had lost their whole families. Each time she heard the word died, her heart sank a little deeper, her arms grew heavier. And the child she carried seemed to weigh the world. The sun rose and fell again, and still she searched. Dust covered her feet, her voice grew hoarse, and her tears ran dry. As she walked, something inside her began to change. She no longer ran with wild eyes. She began to listen. Each house she visited was filled with stories of love and loss. She saw old mothers who had buried sons, young wives who had lost husbands, children who no longer had fathers. Every face she met carried the same quiet sorrow. She began to realize that she was not alone. The pain that she thought belonged only to her was shared by every living being. By the time the day turned to evening, the sky burned with the color of dying light. She sat down beneath a tree at the edge of the village, her child still in her arms. Around her, life continued, women drawing water, men returning from the fields, children laughing in the distance. Everything moved, everything changed, and she understood for the first time that this was the nature of the world. No one could hold anything forever. She looked down at her child. His face was peaceful, untouched by the struggle that still raged in her heart. Slowly, she laid him down on the ground before her. The air was cool, and the sound of crickets filled the silence. She whispered, "My dear one, you are not the only one who has gone. All that is born must also pass away. I see now that I am not alone in my sorrow." That night, for the first time since her child's death, Kisā Gotamī slept. It was not the sleep of comfort, but of surrender. Her mind, worn out from chasing hope, finally rested in quiet acceptance. When dawn came, she rose gently, her eyes no longer filled with panic, but with a strange calm. She knew now what she must do. She would return to the Buddha, not to ask for medicine, but to understand what he had meant. The mustard seeds had shown her what no words could teach. That every home holds its story of loss, that every heart has tasted the pain of parting, and that the truth of life is not found in escaping death, but in seeing it clearly with an open heart. When the morning sun rose again, Kisā Gotamī walked slowly back toward the monastery. The child she once carried close to her heart now rested quietly beneath a tree in the village. Her hands were empty, but her heart was lighter, as if something inside her had quietly broken and healed at the same time. The sky was pale gold, and the sound of birds returned to the world. Every step she took was steady, no longer driven by madness or hope, but by a quiet need to understand. When she reached the monastery, the monks saw her coming. She looked different now. The wildness in her eyes had faded, replaced by calm sadness and gentle awareness. Her feet were dusty, her clothes torn, but her presence was peaceful, almost radiant in its stillness. The monk stepped aside and let her pass. She went straight to the grove where the Buddha sat, just as before, under the shade of the great tree. He was there, silent and still, surrounded by a small group of monks. When she saw him again, she bowed deeply, touching her forehead to the earth. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Lord," she said, "I could not find a house untouched by death. In every home I entered, someone had died. Fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, all have known loss. There is no house, no place, free from it." The Buddha looked at her for a long moment. His eyes were filled with compassion, not pity. In his calm gaze, she felt as though he saw all her pain, all her love, all her confusion, and understood it completely. Then he spoke softly, his words simple yet vast like the open sky. "Gotami," he said, "you have learned what I could not have told you with words. Death comes to all living beings. No one can escape it, and no one can hide from it. Just as the rivers flow to the sea, all that is born flows toward death. This is the nature of life." Tears filled Kisā Gotamī's eyes, but they were not the tears of despair she had shed before. These were tears of understanding. She bowed her head and said, "Yes, Lord. I see now. I carried my child from house to house, searching for a cure. But the real illness was my blindness, my refusal to see what everyone else has seen. The cure was not in the mustard seeds, but in understanding the truth." The Buddha nodded gently. "When one sees the truth, Gotami," he said, "the heart finds peace. All things that arise will pass away. All that we call mind will one day return to the world. When we see this clearly, the mind no longer clings, and sorrow fades like mist in the morning sun." She listened in silence. His words entered her like cool rain falling on dry ground. In that stillness, she felt her grief dissolve, not because she had forgotten her child, but because she now understood that love and loss are not enemies. They are parts of the same great flow of life. To love is to accept that what we love will change. To understand this is not to lose love, but to love more wisely, without fear. The Buddha then asked her, "Gotami, will you stay among us and learn this path, the path that frees the heart from all sorrow?" She bowed deeply, her voice trembling with quiet strength. "Yes, Lord," she said. "The world that once seemed cruel now feels different. I do not wish to run from it anymore. I wish to understand it, to live in peace with it." The monks prepared a simple robe for her. She laid aside her old clothes, the garments of a grieving mother, and accepted the robe of a seeker of truth. Her tears washed away the dust of her long journey. In that moment, she was no longer Kisā Gotamī, the broken mother. She was Kisā Gotamī, the one who had seen, who had awakened to the truth that all things change. As days turned to weeks, she remained in the monastery, learning the way of mindfulness, compassion, and calm awareness. She sat in meditation beneath the trees, watching the rise and fall of her breath, watching the flow of thoughts and memories. The image of her child would sometimes return, but now it brought peace, not pain. She understood that his short life had been her greatest teacher, showing her the nature of the world and the path to freedom. The Buddha once said to the monks, "Just as a mother protects her only child with her life, so should one cultivate a heart of boundless love for all beings." And Kisā Gotamī knew this deeply, for she had lived it. Her mother's love had led her through madness to wisdom, through sorrow to peace. She had searched for medicine to bring her child back to life, but in the end, she had found a greater medicine, the understanding of impermanence, the truth that frees the heart from fear. That day, when she bowed to the Buddha once more, her tears fell onto the earth like clear rain. There was no grief in them, only gratitude. She whispered softly, "Thank you, blessed one. You did not take my pain away, you showed me how to understand it." And in that moment, the Buddha smiled. The sun broke through the trees, and the world seemed newly born. Kisā Gotamī left the Buddha's presence with a new purpose in her heart. The words he had spoken were simple, yet they held a mystery she did not yet understand. She believed him, but she also believed that somewhere in the city there must be a house untouched by death. If she could only find it, her child would live again. Her faith in the Buddha's compassion filled her with hope, and she hurried through the streets, carrying her child close to her chest. The morning light was soft upon the village roofs as she stopped at the first house. A woman was grinding grain outside, her face gentle and kind. Kisa called out, "Sister, please, can you give me a handful of mustard seeds? The Buddha has asked for them to make medicine for my child." The woman smiled warmly. "Of course, I have mustard seeds. Wait here, I will bring some." But as she reached for the jar, Kisa remembered the Buddha's words and asked quietly, "Has anyone ever died in this house?" The woman's hands froze. She looked away for a moment, then said softly, "My mother passed away not long ago." Kisa's face fell. She whispered, "Then I cannot take your seeds," and walked away. At the next house, she was greeted by an old man, sitting by the door. "Good sir," she said, "I am looking for mustard seeds for my child's medicine. Has anyone died here?" The man's eyes grew sad. "Yes, my wife died many years ago, and my son too." Kisa thanked him and moved on. At the third house, a child opened the door and called for his mother. When she came, Kisa repeated her request. The woman nodded kindly, but when Kisa asked the same question, "Has anyone died here?" the woman's smile faded. "My brother died just last month," she said. "I am sorry." Again and again, Kisa walked through the village, from one home to another. Some were rich houses with servants and fine walls. Others were poor huts with straw roofs and earthen floors. Yet in every place she went, the same answer came back. Someone had died, a father, a sister, a baby, a friend. No door opened to her without the shadow of death behind it. As the sun rose higher, the sound of life surrounded her, the cry of babies, the laughter of children, the songs of women working. Life continued in every home, and yet in every home death had entered. For the first time, she began to see how inseparable they were. Life and death were not two different things. They were part of the same flow, like the rise and fall of her own breath. Her steps grew slower. She stopped running. Her voice grew quieter each time she asked, "Has anyone died here?" The villagers began to look at her with gentle eyes, no longer seeing a madwoman, but a soul in search of truth. Some invited her to sit, to drink water, to rest in the shade. She listened to their stories, of mothers who had lost children, of sons who had buried their fathers, of wives who still dreamed of their husbands. Each story was a mirror reflecting her own pain. The day stretched on. The bright sun softened into gold, then deepened into the color of fire. The village fields glowed in the evening light. Kisa walked to the edge of the town where the path met the forest. There she found a quiet place under a great tree and sat down, holding her child in her lap. The weight of his small body had grown heavy in her arms, but her heart no longer clung to him. With the same desperate grasp, she looked at his face, still, pale, peaceful, and for the first time she saw not only loss, but also stillness, quiet, and release. The wind moved softly through the trees. The mustard flowers in the distance swayed like waves of gold beneath the fading sun. As she watched, a deep silence filled her mind. The truth she had been searching for was no longer hidden. It had been before her all along, in every house, in every story, in every tear. She whispered to herself, "Not only my child, but all children must one day die. Not only my heart, but every heart must break. There is no house untouched by death, no body untouched by time." Slowly, she laid her child's body on the earth before her. Her hands trembled as she covered him with leaves and soft grass. She pressed her forehead to the ground and wept, but her tears were different now. They were not the wild tears of grief. They were the gentle tears of understanding. Each drop carried away a little of her sorrow. She did not cry because life was cruel, but because she finally saw how precious it was. When the last light faded and the first stars appeared, she sat quietly beneath the tree, looking at the night sky. She thought of all the lives she had touched that day, all the people who had shared their pain. She realized that she had not been walking through a world of suffering alone. She had been walking through the shared heart of humanity. Every life was a breath, every breath a gift, every gift a moment soon to pass. A soft smile touched her lips. "I understand now," she whispered. "The Buddha did not send me to find mustard seeds. He sent me to find the truth." She felt no anger, no confusion, no demand for miracles. Only peace. a quiet peace that came from seeing things as they are. That night, she slept beneath the stars, her heart resting in a stillness deeper than any dream. In her sleep, she saw her child. Again, not as a lifeless body, but as light, as a spark that had come and gone like all things do. She reached for him, but this time not to hold on, only to bless him, to let him go. When the dawn came, Kisā Gotamī rose from the earth and bowed toward the east, where the sky was painted in gold. She whispered, "Thank you, my child. You came to teach me what no one else could teach." Then she turned toward the monastery, her hands empty, but her heart full. She would return to the Buddha not for medicine, but for wisdom, for the understanding that death is not the enemy of life, but its silent companion. The journey for the mustard seed had ended, but the true journey, the journey of awakening, had just begun. In the months that followed, Kisā Gotamī stayed close to the monastery. She no longer wandered from house to house searching for a cure, nor did she cling to the small grave beneath the Bodhi tree. Instead, she spent her days sweeping the monastery grounds, washing the bowls of the monks, and sitting quietly beneath the trees, listening to the wind move through the leaves. The silence that once frightened her had become her teacher. Sometimes, when the villagers came to the monastery seeking advice or blessings, they would see her sitting alone, calm and still, her eyes gentle and full of understanding. Many did not know her story, but those who did would speak softly. "That is Kisā Gotamī, the one who lost her only child." And then, after a moment, they would add, "She is no longer broken. She has found peace." But her peace was not a cold distance from the world. It was not the numbness that comes from forgetting pain. Rather, it was a quiet knowing that every being carries the same weight of loss, the same longing, the same fragile hope. When she saw a mother holding her baby, she did not feel envy or sorrow anymore. She felt tenderness. When she saw an old man coughing by the roadside, she no longer turned away. She would kneel beside him, offer him water, and speak to him softly, as if she were comforting her own child. One day, a young woman came to her in tears. Her husband had died suddenly, and she could not stop crying. Her body shook with grief, and her eyes were red and swollen. Kisā Gotamī sat with her in silence for a long time. Then she said gently, "When my child died, I too searched for medicine to bring him back. I went to every house, asking for mustard seeds from a place untouched by death. But there was no such house. Only then did I see that suffering does not belong to me alone, it belongs to the world. And when I saw that, my heart began to heal." The woman looked at her, confused and quiet. Kisa took her hand and said, "We suffer because we think our pain is ours alone. But the truth is, we all walk through the same fire. When we see that, compassion is born, not pity, but understanding." The young woman pressed her face into Kisa's hands and wept again, but this time her tears were softer, flowing like rain on dry earth. Kisa said no more. She simply sat with her, two women sharing the same human sorrow, the same awakening. As the years passed, Kisā Gotamī became known as the woman of the mustard seed, the one who understood loss. When children played near the monastery, they often ran to her for comfort when they fell and scraped their knees. She would lift them gently, wipe their tears, and smile. "Pain is part of growing," she would tell them, "but you will stand again." Her words were simple, but they carried the warmth of someone who had lived through the deepest darkness and found the light beyond it. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Kisā Gotamī walked to the river. The sky was painted with gold and red, and the sound of water touched the silence like a song. She sat down on a smooth rock and watched the current flow. For a long time, she did not move. Then she closed her eyes and took a slow breath. There was no memory of loss now, no trace of the desperate mother who had once carried a lifeless child from door to door. There was only awareness, soft, clear, and still. In that quiet moment, she felt the whole world within her. The birth of a child, the falling of leaves, the laughter of people, the silence of death. Nothing was separate. Everything moved together, rising and passing away like waves on the same sea. She understood then that compassion was not about saving others from suffering. It was about seeing the truth of life and loving it anyway. When she opened her eyes, a gentle smile touched her lips. The grief that had once consumed her had turned into something vast and boundless. She whispered to the wind, "All who are born must pass away, but love does not die. It changes shape, it becomes light." From that day on, those who met Kisā Gotamī felt something different in her presence. She spoke few words, but her eyes carried a stillness that soothed the restless. Some said she had found enlightenment. Others said she had simply found peace. But to those who truly looked, it was clear that she had discovered the greatest wisdom of all, the wisdom of compassion born from seeing the truth of suffering. The story of Kisā Gotamī spread far and wide. Mothers told it to their children, monks told it in the temples, and travelers carried it from village to village. It was not a tale of miracles or magic, but of a woman who learned, through the breaking of her heart, that all hearts are one. And so the mustard seed became a symbol, not of healing the body, but of awakening the heart. It reminded all who heard the story that no one escapes sorrow, and yet within that shared sorrow lies the door to understanding, kindness, and peace. In the quiet of the night, when the stars shone over the monastery, Kisā Gotamī often sat beneath the same tree where she had once begged the Buddha for medicine. She would place her hands together and whisper softly, "Thank you, blessed one, for showing me the truth. Death took my child, but it gave me wisdom. Sorrow broke my heart, but it opened the path of compassion." And in the stillness, she smiled, for she had learned that love, pure and selfless, never truly ends. It only transforms. When we hear the story of Kisā Gotamī, we may think it is a story about loss. But it is not only about death, it is about awakening. It is about the moment when a mother's broken heart became wide enough to hold the suffering of the whole world. It is about seeing that grief does not belong to one person alone. It belongs to all who live, to all who love. In her search for a mustard seed untouched by death, Kisā Gotamī discovered something greater than medicine. She discovered truth, that nothing we hold will last forever. And yet, in letting go, the heart finds a peace that cannot be taken away. Every tear we shed becomes a doorway to wisdom, if we dare to look at it without turning away. Every pain we endure can become compassion, if we allow it to soften rather than harden the heart. The Buddha did not save her child. He helped her awaken to the law of life. And through her awakening, countless others learned that sorrow, when understood, becomes the seed of love. So when we lose something or someone we cherish, let us remember Kisā Gotamī's journey, from despair to understanding, from grief to compassion. Because the greatest truth she found is the same truth that waits within each of us. That love does not end with death. It changes. It flows on, as kindness, as wisdom, as peace. And in that understanding, we, too, can lay down our burdens and rest in the stillness of the heart that knows nothing is truly lost.